Yo, listen, before we even get into this, I need you to understand something. The man's wife of over a decade said he ain't got no job. The world champion boxer he's supposedly dating just said he ain't her manager, ain't getting a piece of her fight check, and ain't paying for his own living situation. And a professional radio journalist, a woman whose entire career is built on doing research before she opens her mouth on air, could not find one single verifiable answer to the simplest question in the English language. What does this man actually do for a living? 3 women. 3 completely different lanes. 1 rap legend, 1 world champion in the ring, 1 media professional whose job is literally to know things about people before she interviews them. All 3 sitting in 3 different rooms, on 3 different platforms, at 3 different points in this whole storyline, and all 3 arriving at the exact same conclusion. Nobody knows what Papoose does. Nobody. And while all of this is unfolding, while Claressa Shields is out here in 2026 having to answer question after question about a man who is supposed to be her partner, her rock, her ride or die, where is he? Where is Shamil Mackey? Where is Tommy Pap? Where is the man whose entire brand for 20 years was being the most loyal husband in hip-hop, the one who visited his wife every single week when she was locked up, the one who wrote raps about being a real one? Because right now, in the middle of the biggest firestorm his name has ever been attached to, that man is invisible. He is a ghost. He is running background on his own life, while his new woman takes bullets for him in every interview she sits down for. And that right there is the story nobody is telling correctly. Everybody thinks this is a story about who's cheating on who left who's dating who. It's not. This is a story about a man who has spent his entire career letting the women in his life fight his battles for him, and the receipts on that are so long they wrap around the block twice. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table properly, because if you're just tuning in and you don't know how we got here, you're going to be lost, and I refuse to let anybody watch this video without the full context. So let's rewind. Papoose, real name Shamil Mackey, is a New York rapper who has been in the game since the early 2000s. Underground darling, mixtape monster, the kind of dude whose name used to be spoken with real reverence in cypher culture. He famously married Remy Ma while she was serving a 6-year prison sentence, and for a very long time the two of them were positioned as one of hip-hop's most unbreakable couples. Love and hip-hop, red carpets, joint interviews, the whole 9. That was the brand. Papoose the loyal husband. Papoose the rock. Papoose the one who stayed. Fast forward to now, 2026, and every single piece of that brand is being dismantled in real time in front of us. Remy Ma has publicly accused him of cheating on her, reportedly multiple times, according to interviews she has given and clips that have been circulating for months. She has said, on camera, that she believes he cheated during her incarceration. She has said, on camera, that she believes he cheated after she came home. She has said that the marriage was over long before the world found out, and that she was quote-unquote playing her role while she gathered whatever she needed to gather. And then, right on cue, Papoose reportedly starts showing up in public with 2-time Olympic gold medalist and undisputed world champion boxer Claressa Shields. Photos surface. Rumors escalate. And instead of the story settling into a normal celebrity breakup, it explodes, because Claressa is not a quiet woman. She is a fighter by trade and a fighter by temperament, and when Remy Ma allegedly implied that Papoose was living off Claressa, that he was her manager, that he was taking a percentage of her fight purses, Claressa did what Claressa does. She got on camera and she went scorched earth. She called those claims 3 big lies. She said Papoose is not her manager. She said Papoose gets zero, nada, zilch, nothing from her fights. She said he is not living off her. She said all of it on record, in her own voice. And that, my friends, is where the real question starts. Because if he ain't her manager, and he ain't getting fight money, and he ain't rapping in any meaningful commercial capacity right now, and Remy Ma allegedly said he was in between jobs and needed her platform to solidify a role at ToonCore, then what, exactly, is this man doing with his time? What is Papoose's job? What is his actual, verifiable, tax-paying occupation in the year 2026? Nobody can answer that. Not his ex-wife, not his current partner, not a professional radio interviewer, and most importantly, not him. So let's get into the surface evidence, because this is where the story starts to become undeniable. Piece number 1, the radio interview. There is a widely circulated clip of Claressa Shields sitting down for an interview with a professional radio journalist, and the journalist asks her, on the record, what does Papoose do? Now think about how basic that question is. That is the kind of question you Google in 10 seconds before an interview. That is standard prep. That is the bare minimum. But the journalist could not find the answer. She had to ask Claressa directly, live on air, because there was no verifiable information available. And Claressa, to her credit, called it a great question. She acknowledged that it was a fair thing to ask. And then she proceeded to spend the rest of the interview clarifying what he does not do. He does not manage me. He does not take my money. He does not live off me, without ever actually filling in the blank about what he does do. Piece number 2, the Remy Ma ToonCore revelation. Remy Ma has stated on record that Papoose was working at ToonCore, an aggregator that partners with independent artists for distribution and services. She said, in her own words, that he was not receiving a check from ToonCore in the traditional sense. He was receiving a percentage of subscriptions that he brought to the platform. She said he wanted her to promote ToonCore to her 11 million followers so that his cut would grow, and she refused, telling him to have the woman he was allegedly dealing with promoted on her own page. So the job, as best as we can piece it together from public statements, is essentially affiliate marketing for a distribution service. That is what Remy Ma has publicly stated. Piece number 3, the pattern of absence. Every time Claressa Shields has been in a room being asked hard questions about her personal life, Papoose has been nowhere to be seen. Not sitting next to her. Not standing behind her. Not in the parking lot outside. Nowhere. This is a man who supposedly loves this woman, who is supposedly her partner in this new chapter of his life, and yet when the heat is on her because of her association with him, he is a ghost. Piece number 4, the timeline of his own commentary. When Papoose has spoken, he has spoken about Remy Ma. He has spoken about who cheated on who first. He has spoken about the album he dropped, allegedly one song a month for a full year. He has spoken about a feature with Lil Wayne. He has spoken about everything except the one thing anybody actually wants to hear from him. Where is he when Claressa needs him to step up and answer for their relationship publicly? That silence is deafening. That silence is the evidence. That silence, on its own, is the entire story compressed into one absence. And oh, do I have more for you? Because if you think the surface stuff is bad, wait until we get into the cultural layer, because that is where the whole thing falls apart. That is where the people who actually know these 3 women start opening their mouths. That is where the industry insiders, the peers, the associates, the folks who have been in rooms with Papoose start whispering things that would end a lesser man's career overnight. And I promise you, once you hear what has been circulating in the culture about this man's actual role in his own household, you are going to look at every Papoose interview from the last 10 years completely differently. So stick with me. The stans are really not going to like this next part. Let's talk about Claressa Shields as a cultural witness, because this is where it gets interesting. Claressa is not some random Instagram model who fell into Papoose's orbit and doesn't know what she's talking about. Claressa Shields is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. She is the undisputed middleweight world champion. She is one of the greatest boxers of her generation, male or female, and she is a woman who has spent her entire life negotiating her own contracts, managing her own image, and, importantly, calling out anybody who tries to take credit for what she has built. When Claressa gets on camera and says Papoose is not my manager, that is not a small statement. That is a woman who understands exactly what a manager is, exactly what a percentage is, and exactly how a business relationship is structured, telling the world that this man has none of those things with her. Piece of cultural evidence number 1, Claressa's radio breakdown, where she publicly stated that the 3 claims about Papoose being her manager, taking a piece of her check, and living off her were, in her exact words, 3 big lies. That is a champion on record, saying the narrative you have been fed is false. Piece of cultural evidence number 2, Claressa reportedly telling Remy Ma she would fight her for $1. $1. That is not a woman trying to profit off drama. That is a woman who is emotionally invested to the point that she is willing to step into a professional boxing ring against a rap legend for literal pocket change. That tells you exactly how personally she is taking this whole situation, and it tells you exactly how much she believes Papoose is worth defending. Piece of cultural evidence number 3, Remy Ma's own on-record statements about the marriage, which have been circulating heavily in 2026. She has said publicly that she believes Papoose cheated, that he did so multiple times, that he cheated during her incarceration with an ex, and that he continued after she came home. She has said the marriage was a role she was playing while she gathered what she needed to gather. She has said that when he got the Lil Wayne feature and started making some real progress, she stepped back to let him work, and that is when the cheating allegedly ramped up. Piece of cultural evidence number 4, the Eazy the Block Captain confrontation, which has been reported by multiple outlets including TMZ and Vibe. Papoose has admitted, on record, to a physical altercation with Philadelphia battle rapper Eazy the Block Captain back in December of 2023. Papoose has claimed he knocked Eazy out. Eazy has publicly disputed that characterization, saying the fight happened, but that he never fell and was never knocked out. Whatever the actual choreography of that moment was, the fact remains Papoose confronted a man he believed was involved with his wife, put his hands on him, and made it a public spectacle. And here is the piece nobody is talking about, and this is the counterargument I want to acknowledge before I dismantle it. Some of you will say, well, that's what a man is supposed to do when he thinks another man is with his wife. And I hear that argument, I understand that argument, and I want to give it space. But here is the problem with that argument in this specific case. Papoose was allegedly doing the exact same thing on his own side. If Remy Ma is telling the truth about the cheating, and multiple outlets have reported her allegations, then this was not a righteous husband defending his marriage. This was a man in a mutual situation choosing to make his wife's part of it public while keeping his own part quiet. That is not defense. That is strategy. That is a man who understood exactly how to use a physical confrontation to shift the narrative in his favor. And now, in 2026, that same man is completely silent while Claressa Shields is out here defending him alone. And here is where the entire story gears up into something much bigger than a celebrity breakup. Because up to this point, we have been talking about people, personalities, relationships. That is the entertainment layer. But there is a business layer underneath all of this, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let me walk you through it. First, systemic angle, the artist-to-executive transition myth. Papoose has said publicly that he made the transition from artist to executive. He has cited his role at ToonCore as evidence of that transition. But let's actually look at what that transition means in the modern hip-hop economy, because artists say this all the time, and 90% of the time it means nothing. A real executive transition means you have equity in a company. It means you are on the org chart. It means you have a title with actual decision-making authority, and you have compensation that reflects that authority. What Remy Ma has publicly described, a percentage of subscriptions he personally brings in, is not an executive role. That is an affiliate arrangement. That is a referral commission structure. And there is nothing wrong with earning income that way. Plenty of people do, but calling it an executive transition is a category error at best and marketing at worst. The hip-hop culture has been sold on this idea that every rapper who cannot get a hit anymore is secretly a mogul behind the scenes. And the industry loves this framing because it lets aging artists maintain their brand without actually having to compete for streams. Second systemic angle, the platform-dependent income problem. If Remy Ma's account is accurate and Papoose's income structure is tied to subscriptions he refers to a platform, then his entire financial situation is dependent on his ability to leverage other people's audiences. That is why, according to Remy, he wanted her to post to her 11 million followers. That is why, allegedly, he then tried to leverage Claressa Shields' platform. Because when your income model requires other people's reach, you are structurally incentivized to be in relationships with people who have platforms bigger than yours. I am not saying that is what motivated any of his personal decisions. I am saying the financial structure creates that incentive whether he acts on it consciously or not. And this is the kind of thing the culture never talks about because it is uncomfortable. We want to believe that people fall in love and stay in love for pure reasons. But when the money is structured a certain way, the incentives get complicated, and pretending otherwise is naive. Third systemic angle, the narrative laundering machine. This is the biggest one, and I want you to pay very close attention here. Every time a story like this breaks in hip-hop, there is a machine that goes to work to reframe it. Blogs, podcasts, corner reactors, all of them start amplifying certain angles and burying others. Watch which parts of this Papoose story have been amplified and which have been buried. The amplified parts, Remy Ma's alleged infidelity, the Eazy the Block Captain fight, the custody and money disputes. The buried parts, what Papoose's actual job is, why he is silent while Claressa answers for him, why Claressa had to go on record herself to correct the manager narrative because he would not. That selective amplification is not accidental. That is how narrative laundering works in this genre. The parts of the story that make the man look active, aggressive, in control, those get pushed forward. The parts that make him look absent, dependent, silent, those get pushed to the back. And the reason I am spending this much time on this is because if you do not understand how the machine works, you will keep consuming these stories the way the machine wants you to consume them, and you will never see what is actually happening underneath. This is bigger than Papoose. This is a pattern. And now we arrive at the truth bomb, and I want you to sit with this one because it is the thing that ties every single piece of evidence in this video together into one undeniable conclusion. Here it is. Papoose has spent the last 20 years of his career being carried by women. That is the sentence. That is the truth that every piece of this story has been pointing to from the very first frame. Look at the pattern. When he was an underground artist trying to break through, he married Remy Ma while she was in prison, and let me be very careful here, I am not saying he married her for her platform. That would be a claim I cannot verify and would not make. But I am saying that the timing of the marriage and everything that flowed from it positioned him to benefit from her platform in a way that shaped the next decade of his career. He got the love and hip-hop placement because of her. He got the joint interviews because of her. He got the mainstream visibility because of her. His name, when spoken in mainstream hip-hop conversations in the 2010s, was almost always spoken alongside hers. Then, when that marriage started falling apart, and when he allegedly needed a platform to solidify a role at ToonCore, according to Remy Ma, he asked her to post to her 11 million followers so his subscription commission would grow. Again, using her platform. Then, when the marriage publicly collapses, he is reportedly seen with Claressa Shields, an Olympic champion and undisputed world title holder, another woman with a massive platform and massive earning potential. And when the questions come about that new relationship, when journalists start asking what he does, when the world wants to know what his role actually is, he goes silent, and Claressa has to defend him herself. Every single major public chapter of this man's adult life has been defined by a woman standing in front of him, taking questions on his behalf, absorbing narrative damage on his behalf, and providing platform infrastructure that he then benefits from. And I am not saying he does not care about these women. I am not saying he does not love them. I am saying the pattern is the pattern, and the pattern is now impossible to deny. 3 women, in 3 different eras, in 3 different industries, rap, boxing, media, have all arrived at the same public conclusion about him. Nobody knows what he does. Nobody can point to his independent contribution. Nobody can name the thing he built on his own. And that, right there, is the reckoning. That is the moment the culture has to decide whether it is going to keep pretending this man is who his brand said he was, or whether it is going to look at the receipts and admit what is actually in front of us. Because the receipts in 2026 are overwhelming. But let's talk about who is winning here, because I refuse to end this video on the villain's arc. Claressa Shields is winning. Let me say that again. Claressa Shields is winning. This is a woman who, whatever her personal decisions look like from the outside, has built one of the most decorated boxing careers in modern history entirely through her own discipline, her own training, her own sacrifice. 2 Olympic gold medals. Undisputed champion in multiple weight classes. A resume that will outlast every rap album Papoose has ever released and every interview he has ever ducked. Claressa Shields does not need Papoose. Claressa Shields does not need anybody. She earns her own fight purses. She negotiates her own contracts. She promotes her own bouts. And even in the middle of all this drama, she is still stepping into the ring, still defending her titles, still doing the actual physical work that made her famous in the first place. That is what discipline looks like. That is what integrity in your craft looks like. And Remy Ma, for all the drama and all the mess, is also still working. She is still recording. She is still touring. She is still monetizing her platform and her name. Whatever you think of how she has handled this situation publicly, you cannot deny that she has been putting food on her own table for decades. Both of these women have built things. Both of these women have skills that generate income independent of anybody they are married to or dating. And that contrast, when you place it next to a man whose profession cannot be identified by a professional journalist doing basic research, tells you everything you need to know about who is actually driving this story. One person makes money by being in the room. The other person makes money by being on somebody else's platform. That is the sentence. That is the whole video. And the beautiful thing, the truly beautiful thing, is that the culture is finally starting to see it. The comments under every clip. The reactions on every podcast. The energy in the community when this topic comes up. People are tired of pretending. People are tired of accepting the brand at face value when the evidence contradicts the brand every single day. And that shift, that collective decision to stop pretending, is how the culture course corrects. That is how we get back to a place where being a real one actually means something, where saying you are a hard worker actually requires evidence of hard work, where calling yourself an executive actually requires you to point to a job. We are getting there. Slowly, painfully, with a lot of unnecessary drama along the way, but we are getting there. And this is only the start. I need you to understand that. Because there are at least 2 major developments coming in this story that are going to make everything you just heard look like the appetizer. Development number 1, Claressa Shields has a fight coming up, and the promotional cycle is going to force her to sit down with more journalists, more podcasts, more media, and every single one of them is going to ask her about Papoose. Every single one. And the more she answers alone, without him beside her, the louder that absence gets. Watch what happens over the next few weeks. Development number 2, the divorce proceedings between Papoose and Remy Ma are not resolved. There are court filings, there are financial disclosures, there are custody conversations still unfolding, and every single one of those has the potential to produce documented evidence about who was actually paying for what during that marriage. Documented. Court verified. Not he said, she said. Not podcast rumor. Actual paperwork. And when that paperwork starts leaking, as it always does in these situations, we are going to have a completely different level of clarity about what this man's financial reality actually was. So stay locked in with me, because we are going to be right here breaking every one of these developments down the moment they hit. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss it. Turn on the notifications so you are the first to know when the next receipt drops. And when you are done here, I want you to click the video I have queued up next, because I am about to break down the one detail from the Remy Ma ToonCore revelation that nobody else in this space has caught yet. The specific reason she said she would not promote it to her followers, and what it tells us about who Papoose was allegedly dealing with on the side during the exact window when his career was supposedly making its biggest comeback. That video connects 3 names you have not heard mentioned in this conversation yet, and once you see the connection, the entire timeline of this breakup rearranges itself. Click it now. I will see you there.